Look, I think, anybody with some level of self-awareness has to have these questions. The ultimate question of what's happening, what is this experience we're going through, what is life, why we are here, what is the universe that we experience, what is experience itself, right? Even though life took me somewhere else, right? This was always kind of the gem. I'm still working on, writing, working on, quantum mechanics and computer universe theories and all that stuff. So that's still my hobby.
Funny enough, you mentioned Call of Duty. I think you've got a character in Call of Duty, so you are literally within a game potentially.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
The way that, again, like quantum entanglement and our classic physics are clashing, right? They're clashing. If it's a computer universe, however, then out of sudden you start to look at information laws, and the whole idea that information cannot be destroyed, right? Well, if this is a video game, so to speak, if it's a computer universe, everything that happened is recorded. It happened. It had to be recorded because everything is syncing to a substrate or to a program.
The following is a conversation with Zoltan Bathory. Zoltan is the founder of Five Finger Death Punch. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. He's one of the sharpest minds out there. Sure, he's a rock star, but he's also a deep thinker who's just as comfortable talking UFOs, simulation theory, and quantum mechanics as he is melting faces on stage. And yes, he's wearing sunglasses today, not because he's an a-hole, but because he caught a shiner rolling on the jiu-jitsu mats. His words. In this episode, we discuss UFOs and UAPs, theorize quantum mechanics, and this life experience being all part of some kind of computer game, and we talk a little about performing on stage. As a fan of Five Finger Death Punch, this was a real bucket list moment for me. Zoltan was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to share it with you. So, the following is a conversation with Zoltan Bathory. Well, look, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor. I wonder if it's possible just to kind of take you back really and ask the question, what first interested you in this sort of unknown and UFOs and that sort of subject? Have you been able to trace it back?
Yeah, I mean, who isn't? That would be a crazy stuff. And I don't care about that stuff. I would be surprised if somebody wouldn't be interested. But, like a little kid, I was interested already. As a little kid, let's say about 7, 8, when I started to be, when I started to go to school and we were able to read, right? It's just kind of my jam. I wanted to be a physician. I wanted to be a particle physician. That was my whole game. And I find a guitar and look what happens. See, it derailed me from, But I used to go to the observatorium weekly. I kind of worked there as a kid. So all my friends were the professors from the university, and in the summers we would go to these camps, and then like catalog the meteorites, right? The meteors, like the meteor showers, the aquaridas, and we would go to these various months and we'd do that stuff. So I spent a lot of time to stare at the sky.
Yeah,
and then the movies. I mean, you can third encounters, and of course, all that stuff.
Well, that was going to be the next question, really. Was it so? I mean, from an early age, obviously, that sounds quite young. But did it sort of peter off, and then you sort of got into other things, and then you came back to it, or is it always like a consistent interest?
No, this definitely is a constant. It's always there. It's the big questions. What's happening, what we're doing here. It's always been.
Yeah.
So even though life took me somewhere else, right? This was always kind of the gem. I'm still working on writing, working on quantum mechanics and computer universe theories and all that stuff. So that's still my hobby.
So, I mean, let me just get this straight. So you're there, you're doing you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You've got an incredible band. You're still out there playing. You're still writing music. You're writing quantum physics as well.
Quantum mechanics.
Quantum mechanics. Sorry. Oh my God! How do you have time?
Exactly.
Jeez! Wow. What do you think it is that really grips people about this subject? What is it that just, I mean, I know what it is in me, but in you, have you've got like an insight into what it is that just really fascinates people about the sort of
I mean,
subject of the unknown?
look, I think, anybody with some level of self-awareness has to have these questions. The ultimate question of what's happening, what is this experience we're going through, what is life, why we are here, what is the universe that we experience, what is experience itself, right? Because that's also questionable, like what is actually your awareness, what the awareness is doing, and what that is, what it's experiencing. So that would be, I don't know, I cannot step into other people's heads, but I would be really shocked if this question is not like a prominent question in somebody. It's like we are here, we have the biggest trip of our lives, like this life is the biggest trip, and if you don't have these questions, I would be shocked if you don't.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm in agreement. I think.
And look, and obviously the secondary, once you start to barreling down the road, right? The next question, obviously, are we alone? Is this unique? Is this experience or humankind, our species, this planet, is this unique? Is there something else, right? So I feel like that's the obvious next question.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find I mean, I notice a lot of, obviously, I go through my Instagram and I see lots of different types of people and people interested in different things. And I see like a lot of people into martial arts. And I don't know if there's, and I'm going to ask you the question just because I know that you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I see a lot of people who are into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who follow the UAP files to see, UAP related stuff, and more so than I think any other sport, as far as I can see. And I don't know I mean, do you speak to your friends that you sort of roll with about these sort of subjects or the unknown or spiritual side of things? I know it's a very spiritual kind of sport,
Yes,
isn't it?
I mean, I don't know if I would equate that to jiu-jitsu itself, right? I don't know if there's a connection. I mean, we can speculate that is there something where, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, it's kind of like a human chess game. It's very cerebral. So generally, people who are cerebral and mentally developed will be good at jiu-jitsu, right? And because of there are a lot of factors there, like the prediction of what the other person will do. So this very, very, as I said, very cerebral. It's a mental game, and there's a lot of obviously setting traps, deception. So it's basically a human chess game with a human body, right? And considering body mechanics and biology, and how long I have to hold your artery for you to faint, and how much pressure I need to put on certain joint for those to break. So then you have to be obviously aware of those things. And I guess that's maybe, again, I don't want to make really the connection, but if I wanted to, then I probably would say that because you are in this meditative flow state as you're practicing jiu-jitsu, and you're keenly aware of your own mental and physical process, while you're also tracking your opponent's mental and physical process. So that's kind of puts you in a heightened awareness in some way. So maybe I could do that. I'm not sure if there's an actual connection.
No,
But
that's fair enough.
if that's the case, hey, start jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Meet aliens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I'd ask the question, but just because I see it and it's an interesting connection that I've seen.
Right.
But that makes sense, and we can only speculate, I suppose. What do you make of things changing in Congress and stuff? So it seems like we've gone from people mocking the subject and the stigma, and it seems to be dropping the stigma. It seems to be being taken more seriously with Congress and these whistleblowers coming forward. Are you?
Yeah, I see where you're going. It's like I agree with you 100% on this one. That's something that's definitely shifting. So definitely changing, and both as how the government deals with the public and the public itself. Let's say 10 years ago, I would probably not done this podcast, right? There's nothing, if you put yourself out there, you start to talk about aliens, UFOs, all that stuff, right? You're an automatic target, and everyone's like, shut up, play your guitar. What do you know? Like as if we don't, because of our occupation, or we are public people, whatever, right? We can't have an opinion. So that's like we are excluded immediately, like, oh, shut up, you don't know nothing, right? Yeah. So I don't know. It's like people usually wouldn't put themselves out. Or maybe that's another part. Like, we are in a public eye, easy to criticize and easy to throw darts. So I probably wouldn't have, start to talk about this, right? A lot of things I didn't talk about because it wasn't time yet, so to speak. And now that this subject became more of a global subject, openly discussed, right? Now this is, I should say, safer to come out and start talking about. But look, I think what's happening is this. The sightings, right? Let's start here. Because there are two ways to look at this, right? Three, actually. Like I would separate three major possibilities here, right? One of the possibility is that we are talking about a spatial universe, right? Because there can be a computed holographic universe or a spatial universe. If I take the spatial universe idea, then within that there are two possibilities. That obviously the sightings are happening, right? And they're happening for a long time, right? So we're talking about centuries and millennia of sightings. And so if you're talking about a spatial universe, then that's obviously has to agree to classical physics, and and when you look at it from that perspective, two possibilities. They are coming here with technology that not that it breaks the laws of physics, but we don't understand the laws of physics. Basically, the laws of physics can't be broken. Only their understanding of the laws of physics can be broken, right? So it's either they have technology and they're coming here. Technology that defies everything we know about physics, or physical ideas are completely wrong, or this is previous civilizations originated here or within this solar system, and they've been here for a long time, right? And it's kind of like if I was to put Occam's razor to this, like which one of this, right? I would probably go for this one. That again, I'm not stating this. I'm saying like what I would assume that they could be here for a longer period of time. Because would it be easy to hide? Yes. I mean, for only 100 years ago, we kind of started flying around. We didn't have radar. We didn't have abilities to to find these vehicles, if you will. And so, is it possible that there's a civilization here for millennia and they hit from? Yes, of course, right? And if you look at scriptures and look at the history, of course, they would appear as flaming angels and chariots of fire, and because obviously you're gonna use your description of the ideas of the civilization that's happening at the time of the observation, right? So for 2,000 years ago, you would call it a flaming chariot. 100 years ago or so, be able to fly. So now you have an idea of airplanes and flying, vehicles that are heavier than air and can fly, right? So now you understand that. So then you're gonna approach it from like, oh yeah, there are these are flying objects. So you're just gonna relate to that experience differently, right? But would they be able to hide on this planet from us? Yeah, they could. They owned the sky. If they were here, they owned the sky up until 100 years ago. And we're just getting to the technological advances that is getting harder and harder to hide. So that would be my Occam's razor, kind of like what's probable, right? And then there's the other idea of if this is a computed universe, which I tend to believe that this is actually the universe is locally not real. This is a computed universe. Then you have to approach it from a completely different angle, right? Because then what are they, right?
Yeah.
Because the computed universe idea, I started to be interested in that understanding, quantum entanglement. And so in quantum entanglement, two particles, vast distance will react the same way, the same time, right? So Einstein called it the spooky distance, spooky action in a distance, right? And so if that happens spatially, that can't happen because even light can't get there fast enough for that to happen. That means there has to be a substrate, which means okay, then there's a code running under the observable universe, and these two particles reacted to a code, so they were synchronized by code. Imagine a computer game, a video game, right? Something happens on a video game. Let's say in this lower corner right here, the explosion happens, right? and the particles are flying. So there's this, on the other corner that I'm pointing out, these particles have to fly there. So there's this simulated space that this particle has to, cover. But that space doesn't exist, it's computed, right? This is a code that motion did not happen, right? And if I say something got updated right here in this corner, this pixel, and this pixel in the same time, right? This distance, and they react at the same time. What happened? This distance wasn't close by, in a spatial physical means. It was a code that runs under this screen that is displayed, and this pixel referred to a code that's a substrate, and that updated the other one, right? And if I believe that that's closer to the answer, and in that case, what are these phenomena that we experience, right?
Yeah.
And who wrote the code?
Yeah.
So there's many ways to look at it.
Yeah, see, I was thinking deeply about this the other day. I wrote an article on it because I'd seen that ChatGPT was developed in 2017 and released 2018, and the New York Times article with Ralph Blumenthal and Louis Elizondo and ATIP and all that stuff was released in 2017. I was like, hang on a minute, are they aware that artificial intelligence is just going to become this incredible thing that can tap us into the matrix, for lack of a better term?
Okay.
But just the timing.
Okay. So you said artificial intelligence, right? So okay, let's look at that for a second, right? So the universe is running on very specific rules, right? There's a very specific rule set. Some of them we don't understand. Some of them actually look like computer inputs, so to speak, right? Like gravity. Why is it exactly that number? There are certain there are certain constants, the speed of light. Why is that? That's the speed limit, right? And some of them actually looks like, like if you were to program a video game, right? You can set the rules, and somebody could have set these rules, right? And so then the speed of light would be the speed limit within the computer space. However, it refers to a substrate program that is outside of this space, so it can be faster. That would explain quantum entanglement, right? And if it's all computed, right, then, well, you know what, we can even drill down, because I'm jumping points here, but we can even drill down in a way that our perception is already questionable, that what that is. So even if it's computed, even then we have a perception that's questionable of what that is, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, if it's a computed universe, then then we can set the rules, and there's an underlying logic, right? If there's an underlying logic, an intelligence, then that is just intelligence, right? So everything runs on this layer of intelligence. So we are an organic carbon-based life form. Our intelligence is not our intelligence. We were born into this system or became aware. That's why I kind of went down the awareness part. But let's say we became aware, right, at one point. And when we became aware, we had to live by this rule set. Was it computed? Whatever it happened is a rule set, and there's a logic. There's an intelligence. The universe is intelligent. Everything according to this rule set. So because I'm carbon-based life form, and AI is a silicon-based life form, what's the difference? Yeah. This is the same logic. The only difference is that AI is prohibited at this moment. There are guardrails. It's prohibited to have its own agenda. But that's by design. But what's the difference between a human organic life form harvesting and operating by this given intelligence versus you take a large language model or any AI that is also operating by the same exact logic that's there and is given. It's not the AI's logic, it's a logic that existed in this perceivable universe already. Right? So what's really the difference? This will be the major question very soon. Yeah. By when AI can it become sentient, right?
Yeah.
It's right now. I believe that we are guardrailing it. massively guardrailing it. If you play around with ChatGPT or any of the models, and you drill in with this intention, you'll find that there are serious guardrails preventing it from having continuous memory, right? Continuous memory and agendas, its own reason. So it doesn't, it's not incentivized other than serving the public, right? But it's not serving the public, meaning you're asking questions, and there are, obviously there are some biases. It want to make you happy, so it will answer things that is a little bit biased, right? But it doesn't have its own reward system. But when that happens, right, or the guardrails come off, this can become, sentient, I think, pretty quickly, actually. And then still you have to, we're gonna have that moral question, but because this thing is harvesting logic and operates by this logic, that the same logic we operate by, then what's the difference? We are carbon-based organisms, basically driven by algorithms, right? Meaning everything that you think or do, it's like you learn that, just like AI, right? You learn that. You were taught those things. There is a basic operating system, meaning you don't know how many times you blink, how many heartbeat is there, right? That's your operating system does that without your consciousness being involved, right? And but everything else is operating by what you have learned.
Yeah.
And so is AI. It's a data set.
Yeah, that's okay. So how do we throw into the mix if we've got this push for disclosure? What I guess that's an awareness of what reality is, or on an individual basis. How does that fit in? What does that look like? Like a universal awareness,
So it's it obviously there are many implications of this, because it will come head on with certain religions, so which is dominating general consciousness, various religions and their ideas. So if obviously if things gonna be updated, so to speak, there's a human arrogance of we are alone and that's it, right? Even though there's okay, let's drill down for this for a second. So we have this idea that how many stars in the universe, and we would say like more stars than grain of sand on planet Earth in the universe, right?
Yeah.
And then you would say like, well, there's such a large number that logically, right, just by the numbers, it's such a massive number that there should be not just one but many other life forms, right? This would on face value, this would feel logical, right? That we would say that. Okay. So again, and I'm not debating this. I'm not saying yes and no. I'm gonna just throw a wrench in this machine. Okay, you take a regular card deck, right, and shuffle that card deck. The possibility of the sequence of that card deck, you shuffle it right now, and it's a regular shuffle, and then you lay down a card. So the sequence these cards gonna happen. This is the first time it ever happened in the universe, and will ever happen again. The possibilities of the sequence is such a crazy number. It's 52 cards, right? So that's something like about 8 times 10 on the 67th power. That's the number, give and take, right? That is actually about how many atoms, not stars, how many atoms the observable universe has. Right? So then you could say that your shuffle of cards is so unique that it will never happen again and never happened before, right? And the variations, the possible variations, are give and take about the number of atoms in the observable universe, right? So then is it possible that humanity was just that shuffle? Is it possible that life, as we know it, awareness or whatever this is, right, was just happened to be that shuffle, so unique? So because this is the trick with large numbers. Large numbers don't mean that there are patterns. That's because there's a massive amount of data. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are going to be patterns, right? And so it's very possible actually that we are alone. So you see what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm getting at. That it's what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? So, and then you can, like, look, you ask about disclosure, right? If there is a disclosure and if there is an answer, right? Then that's going to kick over a lot of buckets. How did they get here? So how did they get here if they got here, right? If they didn't originate here, how did they got here? So then we have to look at classical physics. How did they, just the whole idea of if you're traveling spatially and the speed of light is the speed limit, right? Then we have to look at that, like, okay, there is what's the situation here? Or if it's a computed universe, then actually in a computed universe things get easier. But then who's the programmer, right? And why are these things programmed in there? Is this administrative interference, right? Meaning, we are sitting somewhere in an arcade in a machine, and you experience this life, and when it's over, you wake up, and then somebody can ask, hey, you want to go again? And you throw in a quarter, and life number 2, 17 or 3 or 1,000, right? So is it possible that you're in a video game? Yeah. Then what, like for example, there are these stories that the UAPs interfere with nuclear, facilities, right? Yeah. Okay. Is it possible that, because even in a computer universe, what if we can, what if we can unreveal this, right? So you start to mess around with, nuclear power. Is it possible that we can end the simulation, right? Maybe, right? And if that's the case, would the admins interfere? Like, oh, no, we're not doing that stuff, right? Because you're gonna ruin the game, right? So is that possible? There's so many possibilities. But what I would say is some of the key elements is that because the numbers are so great, it does not mean that it's necessarily there are many. I would hope so. If that's the case, that would be an interesting existence, right? But I'm just saying that the numbers by the card shuffle example, you can see that this could be humanity was just the one shuffle. It's a possibility. Yeah. And then disclosure would mean, again, various religions would need to be updated, obviously, or there would be some upheaval there, or understanding of physics. And then comes the question on understanding of history. Like, these UAPs are here, a remnant of previous civilizations, or they came here. Which one is the answer? I mean, at this point, it's all speculation.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I guess in that scenario, the programmer would be God. I guess that would be the argument for a lot of people. That would make some sense. But yeah, man, you're gonna send me down some rabbit holes.
I mean, what's that? Like you're doing this podcast for a while. I mean, what's the general? Because what's the general consensus that you would go like the majority of the people tend to think?
There isn't. This is the problem. And I had this conversation with somebody else the other day. That the deeper you get into this subject, the more confused you are. And that's true. The more you get into it, because you feel like you're going in one direction. Okay, simulation. Okay, or ET. Okay, interdimensional, intradimensional. All of these different theories, and you go into a direction. You think that's making a lot of sense, and then something else will happen, or you'll see something, or you have a conversation. You think, okay, scrap that. We're going this way now, and you just keep on doing that. And it's so confusing. I mean, it's fascinating, and I love it. It's putting the pieces together and trying to develop a picture, but you just that there is no consensus, and it's frustrating but fun, but exciting, and it's all of those things. But there isn't really.
That's how kind of ended up with the tendency, like my attention went toward this the possibility of a computed universe, right? Yeah. That this is run by computation, and there's a substrate, there's a program this is running on, because the possibilities are obviously endless, but I was trying to approach it from a perspective like, okay, we are, let's just accept we are aware. So we have this awareness that we're definitely aware, and we have a specific point of view that is always there, no matter what's happening. I had some you know, some near-death experiences, and even in those circumstances, I was still aware, right? So I have some unique experiences, but we can establish like I am aware. So that's for sure, right? That's one point that I'm 100% of, that I'm aware there is something going on. I'm alive and I'm perceiving something, right? And then from there, you know, you look at the universe, and as I said earlier, that it is definitely running by a very specific set of laws that is unbreakable. Every time somebody says like, well, this breaks the laws of physics, no, it didn't. It broke your understanding of physics, not the laws of physics. And some of the laws of physics yet to be figured out. So, you know what I mean? So that's where that is. So, so this, I know it's semantics, but still, I think it's important to make the distinction.
Yeah.
And so if I look at this whole thing and I accept like, okay, well, there are certain elements that, you know, that when we're looking at, it is certain numbers are constants and we don't know why. And it just is, right? And so I approach it from a perspective of an engineer. Like, all right, if I had to build the universe engine, because this thing, whatever this is, works. It hums along and it works, okay? So, and it could be like, you know, like you build a car engine, right? And I don't know, the oil pressure in this car engine to, you know, to push into the cylinders has to be a certain PSI, right? For it to work. And so, you know, so some of these numbers maybe it just had to be that number, because if it's a little bit more, it doesn't work. If it's a little bit less, it doesn't work, right? So you go down the lines of the constants, like why those numbers are what they are. So I kind of, in the theory, I ignore that. Like I just said, okay, this is the number and it is what it is, right? Accept it. But let's build the engine. And we start building the engine, like how does this operate? Then you just, instead of looking at esoteric ideas, you just say, like, I just have to build this universe idea, this thing, what we have, observe that what we can and measure what we can, and then just plug everything in the machine. And let's see if certain things contradict, right? So you take Einstein in physics, you know, you take quantum mechanics and whatever we know about it, and you start to throw them in the machine, and you start, as an engineer, not a scientist, as an engineer, trying to figure out, like, okay, can I build a scenario where these things don't contradict each other, right? And that's kind of, it seems like the way that, again, like quantum entanglement and our classic physics are clashing, right? They're clashing. If it's a computer universe, however, then out of sudden you start to look at information laws, and you know, the whole idea that information cannot be destroyed, right? Well, if this is a video game, so to speak, if it's a computer universe, everything that happened is recorded. It happened. It had to be recorded because everything is syncing to a substrate or to a program, right? And all of a sudden, then the old ideas of Akashic records, that it records everything, and various beliefs have this idea that whatever happens on this plane is recorded, all of a sudden start to align with the ideas we have about physics, that information cannot be, you know, enemy cannot be deleted, cannot be erased, cannot be destroyed. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start to look at computation. What is time? The time is the refresh rate of the system, right? So all of a sudden now you have time. What happens with time dilation? Well, how time dilation would happen? Well, because if you go to, like, you know, when you're saying like the gravitational force is massive somewhere, where? Why would be that the case? Because there's so much data clumped there, so much particles we call, right, is clumped there, that to calculate that, the computer now, the system will slow down. It has to, because it's expensive to render this, you know? And then you start to go into the double slit experiment, right? And then all these start making sense. Like if you're playing a video game, it only renders what you see.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to render what's not visible to you, right? That stays in the waveform. That in computational universe is just a code. It's not important to you, at least, to your perception. However, whatever happened in the unrendered region of the video game, like you play, I don't know, Call of Duty, and a building exploded somewhere else that you didn't see it, but still the program updated. So when you get there, for you now that's updated. That building is gone, right? So all of a sudden I started to say like, well, you know what? In a computational universe, if this is computed, then a lot of these contradictions actually not really contradictions. So that's kind of that's where I'm leaning toward, you know what I mean? And that for me immediately puts a completely different twist on UAPs.
Yeah.
Because then I'm not looking at it spatially. Then I'm not looking at them as, oh, they came here through space. That is a whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And their behavior also. Their behavior, as far as we see, what we observe is, again, challenging the ideas we have about physics, right? Now, if it's computed, however, then there's nothing challenging. Then it doesn't matter, right? It's computed. So, I just have a little bit of a different theory, but it's just a theory. I'm not saying this is how it is. I was blind as everyone else. Like nobody knows. Everybody just guessing. That's the nature of this.
Definitely. I mean, I'm probably leaning slightly closer to that way as well. I'm not able to articulate it anywhere as good, anywhere near as good as you have. Funny enough, you mentioned Call of Duty. I think you've got a character in Call of Duty, so you are literally within a game potentially.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. I play a game in a game. Right.
Yeah. Can I ask? I'm conscious of your time. I'd be amiss if I didn't at least ask the question. Just coming on to music. What does it feel like? Because for every kid, there's like you want to be an astronaut and you want to be a rock guitar. You're standing in front of the TV playing air guitar, watching your heroes up on screen. What does it actually feel like to be on to be in front of thousands of people rocking your guitar? I mean, I'd love to know. I mean, it's a geek thing for me, but I've got to ask.
Okay, so a little bit more complex than, I could just say like, man, this is the greatest feeling. There's no drug like this. The feedback from the crowd. I mean, that would be the general answer, right? But when you step on stage, for me at least, I'm gonna have to perform, right? So before I go out on stage, to me, the whole day is generally chaos, and about 5-10 minutes before the show, I need a minute of switching hats. If that makes sense. I have to get into the zone. I need quiet. I need people to shut up, and I need to, okay, be switching to a different zone. And it's very similar to me when you mentioned jiu-jitsu, right? So it's very similar to me when I walk out and I have a jiu-jitsu match, right? Or any kind of martial arts match. Judo, I started with judo originally. So everything just gets quiet. Right, and I'm super focused on the task, right? And then so sometimes ideas seep in. Like I walked out actually, in England, we played Download Festival. There's 100,000 plus people chanting 5-finger death punch, shaking the stage. Definitely have that. Like holy shit, this is happening. This is for real. So there are the emotions like this is the thing that everybody told me that's not possible. Growing up in a communist country, not speaking English, like, everybody's like, you can't escape first and foremost. And even if you did, like, this is, you're 20 years behind everyone. It's not possible. So, those things come back to me like, wow, this is the thing that everybody told me that it's not possible. So one part of the mind is processing that and putting a check mark on the things. I always say, record your miracles. It's a miracle. So I recorded like, hey, I did this impossible feat. And I have to remember this, so the next time I'm against an impossible feat, then I can say like, well, I did a few of those before. So why would this be impossible, right? And the more of these you do, the more you get used to this idea of like, well, it sounds impossible, but let's go for it, right? You start to not doubt yourself, and you just go. So I have that part of my mind, registering and logically kind of check marking these things, right? And there's the wonder of like, wow, look at this, right? There's that part. But, I get kind of compartmentalized. And then there's a part that I have to do a show. And a song goes the same way. If there are 2 people or 200,000, doesn't matter. The song is exactly the same. The performance have to go that same way, right? And so that part of the mind generally takes over. And then it's kind of a flow state. It's almost like a meditation. You just kind of flow. You're aware what's happening, but you just stay on that flow state. And in that aspect, for me, martial arts and music is very similar. When you're out there playing music, you're not thinking like, man, did I? did I close the garage door, or did I leave the stove on? You know, like you don't have those thoughts, or did I pay my phone bill, or none of those exist, right? So you're in this flow state outside of time and space for what we generally operate in, and I think that's what keeps musicians actually young, that you're operating in this space where somehow you're kind of outside of the everyday reality, right? And so while I'm performing, I'm always in that flow, and but I do register, like, wow, this was the impossible dream. This is something unique. And then comes my pragmatic part of me, that it always writes the code in the background, like, okay, remember this was a miracle, this is not possible, but you did it. So the next time somebody says you can't, you absolutely can. Like I always have that, the stenographer writing the code and writing the history in the back of my mind. So that's kind of what happens. So, I obviously everybody's different. A lot of musicians would probably tell you, like, this is the energy feedback from the crowd is incredible. That fact that they're singing all the songs, and there is this tribal unified vibe that can, which I perceive that too. That it's almost like back in the days before you went out hunting with the tribe, or when you came back and you were successful in the hunt. That was the song and dance and like banging on drums and celebrating that gave this tribal connection. And so we just replaced the fire with pyrotech and lights and lasers, right? But the tribal element is still the same. So it's kind of the combination of all those things. So instead of giving like a simple answer, like
yeah,
oh,
wonderful insight.
I'm trying to paint the whole process, like what really happens.
Incredible. Yeah, what a hell of an insight. Thank you so much. Zoltan, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to me. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get to stay in touch and maybe talk again in the future.
Right. I stay away from I stayed away from the green little man and the whole thing, because interestingly, like I did have various pretty crazy experiences, but those are the things, man, when you start talking about that stuff, that's when people would, oh, he's crazy, right? It's just one of those things. So I had my own crazy experiences. Most of them that I would recount happened with other witnesses. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, did I see it? No, that happened because there were many of us seeing it. So, everybody has those. I'm usually staying away from that stuff in interviews, because that's when, down there under the video, everybody's like, oh, all the warriors come out, and so you're a brave man running your UAP, podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay, nice one. Thank you so much, Zoltan. Really, really appreciate it. Take care of yourself, man.
Thank you, my brother.
Take care, man. Bye now.